Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Dan. How are you today?
Good. Long time no see.
No doubt.
You like my custom background?
Very nice. Kippy Dome. And then, let's see, Vern and Josh and Vanessa, do you have a slide that you'd like to test out? Okay, perfect. We'll just give a couple of moments for more folks to get here before beginning. All right, hello and welcome to the Malcolm Renfrew Interdisciplinary Colloquium. Really quickly here, I'll just give you a preview of what we'll be having next week, and then we'll get a chance to kind of move directly into the presentation for today. Next week, we'll be hearing from R. Charles Weller from the Department of History at Washington State University with Islamic Contributions to Western Civilization. This session will briefly highlight historical sources and achievements of Islamic civilization in the so-called Islamic Golden Age, 750 to 1250 CE. It will then address Islamic contributions to Western civilization in the fields of science, medicine, philosophy, law, economics, literature, music, language, education, and other relevant areas from the 10th to 17th centuries. The talk will also address the implications of this history for Western Islamic, as well as broader global, intercultural, interreligious, and international relations today. So that will be next Tuesday, March 2nd at 12:30. But today I'm pleased to present Vanessa Sielert, Vern Sielert, and Josh Skinner from the Lionel Hampton School of Music, and they will give us a peek behind the curtain of a virtual Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Sielert, and I'm the director of the School of Music, and I'd like to introduce a few people that are on our team with the Jazz Festival. First, Josh Skinner, who is the manager of the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, and Vern Sielert, who is the artistic director of the Jazz Festival. And then Becca Lunstrum, who also has her camera on, is our special events coordinator, and she does a lot of the logistical work behind the Jazz Festival too. So we're all here to answer questions as things kind of progress, but I thought that we would take a moment just to share with you a little bit about where the idea for a virtual festival came. It really came out of some research that Josh initially did. he came back and presented us with the options that we were able to pull off for a festival this year. And we went through those options. So I'll let him talk a little bit about that. Then we'll take a little peek at what we're looking at this year as far as a artistic, from artistic standpoint in the types of concerts that you'll see. And then I'll talk a little bit about the educational aspect of the festival. And then we'll kind of wrap some things up and then open it up for questions. So with that, Josh, why don't you explain a little bit more about the start of the festival and what you were looking at as far as options?
So it's been a long year for many reasons when we think about the pandemic. Some of you may recall, some of you may not recall, Jazz Fest was kind of on the cusp of that last year. We were literally in Jazz Fest last year on February 28th. That was Friday because we had leap day, February 29th. And that's when we kind of had a little bit of a COVID scare here on campus because it was all new with the first case being confirmed over in King County. And post-festival, we started to, as a team, Becca Lunstrum, myself, and then I pulled in Vern and Vanessa a little bit later. We started to have that discussion of, what does next year look like and how do we approach? And so that conversation started to evolve as quickly as the news did over, April and May. And we quickly realized that there was going to be very, very little chance to hold a physical festival on campus in 2021. At the time, I was heavily involved with League of American Orchestras on their panels. I was heavily involved with Independent Venues, an organization that has been kind of a very loud voice in the Pacific Northwest, specifically covering a lot of those venues in Portland and Seattle, and a bunch of other entities. And we were having the discussion of what live music looked like. And we were kind of approaching it from that perspective, not necessarily looking at the education side yet, because if we couldn't have people in a venue for a performance, we knew we would have to rethink things drastically. And once I saw that live venues in the Northwest were not even contemplating booking an ensemble until January of 2021, I knew we didn't have a chance to hold the festival. So I started pulling together some resources with actually Becca Lunstrum, myself, and we started to brainstorm a variety of ideas of how to approach a virtual festival. What would that look like for kind of our big three pillars? What would that look like for the educational component with the student performances and those workshops that typically go with that? What would that look like for our educational outreach? What would that look like for artist performances? And so we started to kind of like piece together what was possible. We also had a challenge on our hand. Vanessa Sielert had done a great job as our artistic advisor, securing actually the Gordon Goodwin Big Fat Band for 2021. And we were all very excited. I know the high schools were very excited. And that contract was in place. And I think it was might have been end of July, 1st of August, we came to an agreement that they didn't want to travel. They weren't comfortable. They weren't comfortable doing something remotely. So we kind of had a look at that talent rebuy, so to speak, as well. So once we knew that we were going to push to this virtual side, we had to start thinking of different scenarios. The first thing that I brought up was the aspect of schools in our region. We have, when we think of the Northwest, just Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, and the Canadian schools up in the BC area. That's usually our largest, so to speak, clientele or groups that attend. And we knew there was going to be such a wide scope of what schools were going to be able to do and not do in this last academic year. So we had to approach it in a way that a school could participate in the 2021 virtual festival if they were completely remote, or if they had some type of hybrid component in, or if they were just regular face-to-face school, like meetings with school. And so that was a component in how we had to decide on student performances and workshops. as we started to slowly pick at things, we created a couple presentations and gave a few options. We created a completely virtual option, kind of a hybrid. And then we also had an option of just not having anything. And that one quickly fell off the table. And we had an opportunity to meet with our executive branch, our provost and president, and offered up a few options in, if I'm not mistaken, it was early July, just having that conversation. And they completely agreed that the virtual option was best to keep our student body population safe, as well as we just had the big unknown of what the public schools K through 12 even had the ability to do. So that's really when we dug in. I kind of tasked Vern and Vanessa quickly with identifying their respective roles, some educational components of who do we want. We have the opportunity to reach out to the entire world now, and we can contact the entire world. We can ask schools to attend that normally could never attend. So let's take this opportunity to make these invitations go out, cast a little bit wider net. And they were fantastic about that. And I'll let them talk about the workshop aspects and the artist aspects that we decided to go with. But that kind of scratches the surface when we talk about how we started to approach and conceptualize a virtual event. For me, when we decided to go 100% virtual, it was all about engaging UI stakeholders, alumnus, schools that have been in attendance, and anyone that would go beyond our typical, I'm going to call it, 10-hour radius. And we've had great success with that. Schools from Arizona, Minnesota, just schools kind of chiming in from different parts of the country to join us that normally they wouldn't have that opportunity to, or it would be a rare one. That kind of gives the groundwork of what we were doing with the virtual part. All of this has been set up logistically, utilizing our internal resources. So we've been collaborating heavily with university communications and marketing, heavily with the IT department to make sure that all those components are in place. And then obviously there's so many, in any event planning, there's so many unknowns that we have to plan for when we look at putting on this event in a different form than we ever have. And in some ways it's been quite the Herculean task. And I have to commend Becca Lunstrum with what she's helped me with. And we've had so many conversations and problem solving sessions to make this happen. So what I'd like to maybe pass off to Vern and Vanessa is kind of talk about their process and what they did and how they kind of approached the educational aspect and the artist aspect so we could present that. And then I'll come back to probably wrap some of that up towards the end.
Sure. Unless Vanessa, did you want to go? Okay. Yeah. So like Josh said, the artists generally get booked out, well over a year in advance. And we were excited about this great big band from Los Angeles, the Gordon Goodwin Band, who, if you're not familiar with his music, it's very popular these days with the high school jazz band community. Very catchy tunes. He is a writer that did a lot of writing for cartoons actually in LA, and so some of his music kind of sounds like that. But anyway, like Josh said, that was not going to be a possibility. So we just had to start thinking of people that we could have in that maybe would be used to this type of format, and that could engage in our sort of our mantra, which is grounded in tradition and breaking new ground. So the first group that we thought of, and it wasn't just me, there's this marvelous vocal group called Sage, made up of 4 fantastic singers from really all over the country. And I think they had done one live performance, maybe at the Jazz Educators thing, and a few other things, but they actually don't even have a traditional CD out or anything like that. But they have a really great online presence. If you were to go to the Jazz Festival website, you can see some of their videos. And they're tremendous, and the blend of their voices is really amazing. They all arrange. They're all very accomplished arrangers, and they've put together these really great sounding videos, and also visually great, like just really engaging. They spent a lot of time and a lot of thought was put into the presentation of their music. It's not traditional jazz in the sense of what we think of like swing music. It's not anything like that. It's very contemporary in a lot of the rhythmic feels and the grooves, but very I could say just very enjoyable music. So that we contacted them, and one of the singers, Sarah Gazarek, has been to the festival in the past as a solo artist, and she has roots in the Northwest. She's actually from Seattle. She was went to somebody help me out, the biggie. Oh, Roosevelt.
Garfield. Was it Roosevelt?
Roosevelt, yeah, because Scott Brown was her director there. So we contacted her, and she was very, very excited about the idea of doing this. At first we weren't sure if it was going to be, something that they would do at a location that worked for them. I think a lot of their things they've done in the Los Angeles area, or whether we would actually be able to bring them here. And I think like on the logistical end of this, Josh could talk a little bit more about that. But they are coming here. They will be on campus, which is great because they'll have a chance to interact with our students a little bit, obviously, safely with all the protocols. But they will be doing their performance Friday night at the festival, live streamed from the administration building auditorium. And Vanessa has worked with the campus safety folks in another opportunity for our students, where they're actually going to be able to have a very small but an actual audience in the hall for their performance. I think it's 22 seats, I think, are available, and that's the students are getting to they're going to have a lottery basically to let the students be in the hall to actually see their performance. But we're very, very excited about them, and just a little bit more about the four singers are Sarah Gazarek, I mentioned. Amanda Taylor, who also has roots in the Northwest. She's from Seattle as well, and went to school at Central Washington. Janae Kendrick also has roots in the Northwest. She is not from out here, but she is currently on faculty at the Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. And then Erin Bentledge, who is actually from the East Coast. And it's Sarah, Amanda, Janae, and Aaron, so that's the Sage, the S-A-J-E. That's the first letter of their first names. So we're excited about that. And then on Saturday night, we have a young artist. Her name is Camille Thurman. She's a wonderful saxophone player and multi-instrumentalist. And she's also, she's what they call a true double threat. She's a wonderful vocalist as well. And does both of those things in her performances. And she is doing her performance will be from New York City, which is where she's located. So she won't have the opportunity to be on campus, but she and like Sage as well will be doing a workshop and having some interaction with our students. But a little bit about Camille. She is in her early 30s. She is a native New Yorker. She actually went to school up in SUNY Binghamton, I think, and didn't study music at all at school. She has a degree in environmental science, and but was always involved in music. And moving back to New York, it soon became her career. She's performed with, her resume looks like the who's who of current jazz artists that she's been able to perform with. And maybe one of the most notable ones, if you're familiar with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, which is run by Wynton Marsalis. She has been a member of that orchestra and toured and recorded with them for the past 2 years. And in that orchestra's 30-year existence, she's the first female to have a full-time position in that group. And She can be heard on their I think it's their latest recording, or maybe it's not their latest, but a new big work that Winton wrote called The Ever Funky Lowdown, and she is featured on there both on saxophone and as a vocalist. So we're really looking forward to her performance. And then the other aspect of it was, what could we do with some of the resources that we have? And we do have a lot of resources in the history of the festival. We have years and years and years of recordings that sit on the archive shelves, either in the library or down in the video production office, that we can't necessarily broadcast or let go out there because of various copyright things. But over the years, the festival has been documented that way through VHS and DVDs. And so we thought, how fun would it be to go back through some of those old archive performances and pull a few clips and just kind of take a look at the past. And for that, I need to thank Doc Skinner was very helpful in pointing to different years. And he has a pretty amazing memory of who was here when. So that was helpful. And I also have to thank Dan Buckvich, who went down to the video production office with me. And we sat there for several hours going through old performances and finding things that we liked. It was fascinating. And it's those performances have not been seen since the day, the moment, the evening that they happened. And so that part is pretty fun. So for the second half of each evening, we've put together 2 sets of historical performances, of course, featuring Lionel Hampton and his band. You'll see lots of Lionel in those, but some of the other guests, and that reads like a who's who of jazz history. Folks like, let me think, John Hendricks, vocalists, Diane Reeves, Dee Daniels, instrumentalist Ray Brown, Jeff Hamilton, Freddie Hubbard, Benny Golson, Art Farmer, Hank Jones, Elvin Jones, Herb Ellis. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So those are just some of the folks that you'll see in those archived performances. And like I said, of course, Lionel Hampton and his band. And so we're looking forward to sharing that stuff with you this weekend. So.
Thanks, Vern. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the educational aspect of what we do at the festival. As Josh mentioned, the education aspect is both the students coming to campus and performing and interacting with each other and interacting with the artists that we have here, but then also attending the workshops that go throughout the day. And so first, for the performances, as Josh mentioned, we were dealing with really a multitude of situations in the public schools. There are some schools that aren't even meeting for band or choir at all, that are doing, a virtual format to their band classes and choir classes where they just listen to music and they don't actually get to perform. There are some that are doing assignments, one-on-one kind of assignments that are sending recordings back and forth. There are some that are doing virtual performances together where they will record their performance individually, send it into their band or choir director, and the band or choir director kind of Frankensteins it together into a performance of everybody in their own spaces. And then there are some that are actually meeting face to face. So it's really a wide variety of situations around the country as far as what people are doing. And so we wanted to really try to serve all of those communities and tap into whatever people had to offer. So we've made the performance aspect of the festival kind of two parts in flexibility. One, we've made that optional. So for those people who aren't meeting and have nothing happening at all, or just don't feel comfortable sending something into the festival, they don't have to. They can still take part in the workshops, and we've offered that at a very discounted rate. So just to take part in the workshops alone, and we're giving these educators access to the workshops for 90 days following, I think is what we're doing, 90 days following the festival. So they don't even have to go to the workshops in real time. We're offering that for $100. So for $100, their entire school can go to these workshops for 90 days following the festival. And then in addition, we've offered some flexible packages as far as soloists and combos and large ensembles to participate as well. And we've made that flexible in the sense that they can send in just about anything that they want to do. So if they're a soloist and they don't have a backup rhythm section to play with them, they can record with a play along recording. If they are a band that's not meeting in person, they can record their individual parts and they can have their director Frankenstein it together and send it in. If they're able to get together and perform in a small group, if it's not traditional instrumentation, it doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want, send it in ahead of time, and then we find the adjudicators to review their performances and then meet with the students in real time during the festival and meet with them via Zoom and review their performance and give them tips and tricks and help them along the way. So we're really trying to be really flexible because we know that, you know, everyone is dealing with all of what is COVID. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible and just provide basically an out for these educators in the K through 12 schools who are working around the clock, trying to figure out which end is up. It actually really mirrors what we're doing in the School of Music this year with our workshops that we're sending out to educators across the country. Again, options for different workshops that we'll come in and do with their students. We'll do, you know, little master classes with their individual instrument types. We'll do a master class with an ensemble. We'll just come in and talk about what it means to go to college. We'll talk about, you know, anything that they want. And we've thrown that net out wide. And that's really kind of what we're trying to do this year, because like I said, K-12 music education has been turned upside down this year. So that's really important to us. In addition to those performances, we were able to secure some really fantastic artists this year for our workshops. And I don't know if you've all had the chance to go to the website and check out just the caliber of artists that we have listed, but it truly is an amazing list of people. We have Jason Marcellus on vibraphone, Stefan Harris on vibraphone. We have Randy Brecker of the Brecker Brothers on trumpet, also of just Randy Brecker, but Randy Brecker. We have John Fedchuk on trombone. We have Robin Eubanks on trombone, Jeff Hamilton. The list goes on and on and on. And it really is amazing that we were able to secure such great artists. Part of that is because music has been turned on its ear this last year, and people are looking for ways to connect with everyone because they're not able to perform live. And then part of it also is our relationships with some of these corporations over the years. One with Yamaha Corporation, who's been fabulous at offering some of their primary artists up for us to have at the festival, and KHS America, who Josh works with really closely to provide equipment for the festival. But since we're not having a festival this year, they were able to offer up some artists to be at the workshops. So we're just really trying to connect with as many people as possible across the country, as Josh mentioned. What am I forgetting?
I don't think you're forgetting much. I think the big challenge that we saw as a team was, how do we engage schools? How do we provide them with resources to help them be successful in a challenging time? And how do we provide a nice feel-good moment for the general public in a safe and positive way? And, you know, I think this team, and on my screen, it comes across here, you know, I have Vanessa Sielert, Vern Sielert, Becca Lunstrum, and actually I'm going to call out Andrea Wadsworth too. Andrea's been critical. She's our social media intern. So anything that's been popping up through social media, Andrea's been critical at helping curate that and populate that. But it's just been one of those things of finding ways to engage feel-good moments with the history of the university, with the Jazz Festival, and then engage those music educators. Becca, what am I missing? Anything in particular? Because I feel like you're definitely the eyes and ears of what's been taking place.
Yeah, as has kind of already been said, we've been working really hard to create this product that everyone is actually going to want to use and enjoy and be a part of. And I think a big challenge in just coming up with that and that initial vision, the flip side of that is like, okay, well, now how do we actually execute it? How do we make this happen in a way that people are actually going to be able to do in whatever setting that they're in, and so that comes down to really being strong on communication more so than ever, and collaboration, relying on other people across campus that have the knowledge that we don't. I've learned more about Zoom this year than I ever thought I would. And I've had to ask a lot of questions. I've had to rely on IT. I've had to rely on, our communications team to make a lot of that happen. Because, it's like you think having these artist workshops and doing all these performances is a really great idea. But how do we get artist A who's on the East Coast and artist B who's on the West Coast and all these people that are in the middle to ultimately come together over 3 days and make this big puzzle all work? And that's been a challenge. I mean, it's always a challenge with Jazz Fest, but I think in particular this year, if like in a typical year, if you have a little fire that comes up, you can walk in the room and verbally communicate and put out that fire. But this year, if something comes up, there's a good chance that, who knows if you're even going to be able to talk to the person that's having a problem, and so that comes with, a new kind of planning and a new kind of, trying to think ahead as much as possible, trying to anticipate those potential problems. And it's been a big learning curve, but one that I think, we spent a lot of time and brain power on, and I think we're set up to have a good event this year. So I'm excited to finally see it all come to fruition and play out.
And I'd like to kind of piggyback on what Becca was saying. It's been a big learning curve, and there's been a lot of relying on a lot of folks on campus. But I think that what has come out of it is that we've found that there are some things that we may actually hang on to. We definitely all want to see this back in person and live in 2022. But there may be elements that we're able to reach people in a different way, that we're able to bring in some different kinds of talent for different things. And I know that just yesterday, Josh and I had this conversation about, next year is going to start the week after this festival. So we need to, have our typical debrief session, but it's going to be a different kind of debrief where we talk about what really worked in this entirely new environment and what we can use moving ahead.
When you think about kind of like the whole picture, I mean, an event this scale and size, you typically are planning 12 to 18 months before. I haven't really shared this even with Vanessa yet. I mean, I have a couple proposals on my desk of how to approach things in 2022 and how to utilize some of these aspects to create a hybrid festival moving forward. And it's really that conversation of how do we do it and what do we want to include for next year? When you think about, logistics just for an on-festival campus, it can become pretty mind-boggling pretty quick. That matrix is very similar when we do it virtually. In some ways, it's more complicated. Just scheduling student performances over, I can't remember if it's 5 or 6 time zones, let alone artists. It suddenly, that becomes very challenging. We engaged adjudicators that normally we would not have been able to get. And, some of them are sitting in the East Coast. And so their day starts a little bit later for them, goes a little bit further into the night. So it's all these little factors like that make that complex matrix in front of us. And we play Tetris till we solve it, so to speak. And we've had a great time doing it. And it's been a great learning experience.
So actually, thinking of things that we forgot, as many of you maybe know or don't know, a couple of years ago, the Lionel Hampton School of Music became an affiliate of the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles. And there are not too many schools in the world actually that are Grammy affiliates. And that was through Vanessa's hard work getting that to happen. And she had she's thinking of ways to sort of engage the Grammy folks and how can we make that part of the festival. And her idea was, why don't I contact people from these other Grammy affiliate schools of music and maybe have them recommend a student and put an ensemble together made up of these folks from different parts of the world. And the original idea was that we would, invite those folks to campus, let them meet each other, let them play, rehearse for a few days, and put on a performance. Of course, we weren't able to do that this year. But through Vanessa's work, she contacted those folks, and we put a band together. And Kate Skinner from our faculty and myself met with the band kind of every Friday morning for a few months, and kind of got a thing off the ground. And they were able to record 2 pieces together. And one of our students, actually, a U of I student, Josh Day, who's a pianist in the School of Music, was part of that ensemble, and he actually did the video editing work to put these tunes together. The drummer from the group, her name is Ivana. She's from the Berklee College of Music in Boston. She did all the audio engineering with all these recordings. And so we're going to play those. There's 2 tunes, so we'll do one Friday night and one Saturday night, kind of in between the first half, second half. And it's really, it came out really well. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work. These people who had, it's one thing to put something together virtually with musicians that you're comfortable with and that you've known and that you've played with before, but these folks had never met and never played together. And it was really pretty cool what they came up with. They did one original tune written by a saxophone player who is from Temple University in Philadelphia. And then they did a classic Charles Mingus tune called Self-Portrait in 3 Colors. But it's really fun. The people in the groups, like I said, from U of I, Temple, University of Southern California, Middle Tennessee State University, and the University of Chichester in England.
Cal State LA.
Oh, Cal State LA. Thank you. So it's a truly sort of world collaboration, and we're excited to present that too this year.
So we don't want to talk we don't want to talk everyone to death. We would like to open it up for questions, I think.
Sorry, just dropped right before questions. I just dropped into the chat. You can obviously register for these no-cost events on our website. That link that I put there, those concerts that are mentioned, that's the way to go. But yeah, if you have any questions, please.
And the concerts are at no cost. That is an important factor to remember, that all of the concerts at 5 p.m. each night, and then 2:30 p.m. on Thursday will be the Lionel Hampton School of Music Camps Gala. So, and all of those are at no cost. All you have to do is register online.
Thank you all so much for presenting. I think in the past we've done questions in the chat, but I think we have a kind of tight enough group here that we could have folks just go ahead and unmute themselves and put their video on if they're able to ask some questions. I do see there's one here in the chat. How many schools are participating this year, and how does that list compare to years past?
Yeah, thanks, Lydia. So we knew number-wise we would be down this year. There's so many schools in Oregon, Washington that aren't even meeting when it comes to music and music education. One of the interesting things when I work with Yamaha KHS, they've seen uptick in sales of instruments when it comes to things like guitars and drums, because individuals like yourself might have more at home time and either they're buying something for themselves or for their kids. But what they said that they've seen a huge, and I can't remember the exact statistic number, but the numbers are incredibly low when it comes to the typical rental instruments, so your band and orchestra instruments, and that's almost scary right now. I know what's been interesting is our initial registration. We usually see about 136 schools in a regular year. I'd say between 130 140 a year for Jazz Festival, which ends up being between 4,000 and 6,000 students, depending on how many schools, how many kids come with a school. I think we shipped out just under 72 welcome kits to directors, which is kind of an added bonus this year. But we've had another half dozen plus roll in the last week, which they just want to participate in the workshops, receive our welcome kit. And I think from a few texts I got today, we're going to see more of those roll in. So it wouldn't surprise me if our final number is just under 100 schools participating from that perspective.
And I would add to that, you know, like Josh says, he's getting text messages from folks now. And with as much communication as we've sent out, I was surprised when I would give someone a phone call. They had no idea that we were even doing a jazz festival this year, or they knew that we were doing a jazz festival, but they thought that they had to participate in the traditional manner. They would have to, you know, send a recording of a live band. And even though we had sent several emails. So I think that just shows that we're all getting inundated with maybe too much electronic communication these days.
That communication factor has been a delicate conversation that Becca and I have, just realizing we can't inundate them with material. We have to be really careful with how many we can send, because in a lot of ways, and I don't think none of us are the exception, we all kind of hunkered down this last year and avoiding outside components if we don't have to. And so it was a challenge to start kind of cracking into that and educating individuals that we have this opportunity for you, regardless of your current circumstance as an educator.
I see Michael Kite has a question. What kinds of innovations have our own LHS1 students come up with during COVID time? You know, I think the students have been amazingly resilient, and I think that they are, you know, just alongside all of the faculty too, learning so much more about technology, about recording, about, you know, using the technology to their advantage. And, you know, if Vern, you have something to add to that, or Josh, please do. But I also think that, you know, as a school of music, we had to be pretty creative in the way that we approached things, because we aren't able to make music in our own building because of our HVAC system. We're only able to make music in the performance hall, but the HVAC system in the music building is actually so old that it just exchanges air with itself. And so if you're performing in one space, no matter how big it is, it's sharing that with everybody else in the building. And so we had to think of different ways. And Samir has been great. He works in environmental health and safety at figuring out just where we could perform safely. And so we've had to go to the Dome for a lot of ensemble rehearsals. You probably saw us outside at the beginning of the year. John Anderson, our piano technician, turned into our carpenter and made about 100 large barriers to clear vinyl barriers to place in front of students so that they wouldn't share the immediate aerosols with each other. We're this semester playing in spaces that have better ventilation in the afternoons after classes are done in Renfrew Hall in the chemistry labs. We're in Ag Sci 106, which is a large space with good ventilation. We're in Jeb 104. So we've adjusted, and the faculty have been amazing at adjusting their schedules to make it happen. And then, you know, we're doing some creative projects. Dan Buckfitch actually wrote a piece for our Band Fest String Fest, where we had all of our School of Music perform at a distance, socially distanced in the Dome. We brought in University Communications and Marketing, and they video recorded with their drones over the band flying in and getting different shots. And then we put a call out to every high school student that we could get in touch with to record these parts of music, these pieces of music that Dan composed on video. And we're in the process right now of taking those videos. Christian Clark is a grad student who's putting the videos together. John Melcher did the audio recording. He works for University Support Services. And we're compiling this massive video of our students performing alongside all of these high school students. And then we'll push it back out to these high school students to share on their social media networks. So it really is a matter of everybody in the School of Music and everybody on campus collaborating to make things happen. The creativity doesn't just, stop with, the students or the faculty. It's everybody who's bent over backwards to make everything happen.
A quick question about, I see that there are a couple of the pre-festival workshops that have already happened. Has there been anything that you kind of learned from those, or I guess how have you kind of seen the interaction between the presenters and the presentees?
Yeah, good question. So there was a couple reasons why I kind of pushed hard for these pre-festival workshops. One was to provide an educational resource to our teachers that needed something at the time. And two, it was kind of like a beta test. It was a little bit of like, okay, let's see how this works. Let's make sure that we're doing this in a way that we feel comfortable and pushing this product out to the public. I tend to be a very particular individual when it comes to, what we present for Jazz Festival. And so it allowed us that opportunity to kind of beta test things. And of course, we learned lots of things. As Becca said, I mean, she could probably get picked up by, don't let them know, but by Zoom and run so much for them because of her expertise on the back end of that now. But that definitely was part of why we did that. Let alone, I wanted to also engage some of our corporate equipment sponsors that help provide these individuals at no or very low cost to us to have that available.
Did you find that there was a lot of synchronous participation in those, or has it been mostly kind of watching after the fact?
Yes, I'll let Becca comment on that. There's been a combination of both, for sure. And I think last week is a great example of that. Some of our ancillary events we had last year, where some of the attendance was lower than expected, but then suddenly, social media takes over and people start grabbing those recordings and that type of thing. But Becca, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, it's been kind of a mix. It's like one session you'll have like pretty high attendance, and then the next one maybe not quite what you were expecting. But regardless, like, I know I've received a lot of questions on like, are these still available? When is this happening? Can I still view this? All of that. And so it again kind of comes down to that everybody's in a unique, weird situation this year. And communication is difficult because it's like anything that anyone is doing this year, they're receiving information about that in the same way. And it's all electronic, it's all digital. And so it can be just this kind of overwhelming flux of information. And so, sometimes people don't necessarily get it right away. And that's okay, but you help them through it and you say, we're still going to make this available for you. And that was part of, our original thinking too, is like, how is the user going to get the most out of this? And we don't want it to be really restrictive. We want people to be able to participate live, but we also want to give people the opportunity who are in different time zones and may not be available at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday, the opportunity to still participate. So it's been a wide mix from event to event, but I think it's circulating well, kind of in its own way, in its own time.
Well, one thing to kind of add on to what Becca said there, if you as a participating member of this group were ever in music, often music takes place in those early AM hours, sometimes even before school. So there was never an ideal time to host this live workshop. It wouldn't have mattered time zone wise so we just knew that we were going to select times and roll with it because we knew that back end and having that resource available was really the critical component.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. Is there any way for the folks who are participating asynchronously, like are there any avenues for them to reach back out to the presenters? Like, is there any kind of continued dialogue with those types of presentations?
What you'll hear from those presenters is often, a good example was like Jennifer Wharton. She talked about like, hey, if people have questions, I'm nobody, email me, and she's funny because she is somebody. She's an incredible musician. She's very well established and known. And she's saying, yeah, contact me. This is the way to contact me. So some of those have been very forthright, like, yep, reach out to me. And I think that's one thing that we've seen in the pandemic is that wall that's typically been there to access some of these individuals has dropped a little bit because this has become a little bit of our vehicle or avenue to work with each other and to stay connected.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. Thank you.
So nice awkward moment. I'll just bring up, if there's not any other questions, join us for Jazz Fest. Go to that link, register, check out what we've done, what we've provided. One thing that's been interesting to me and our team is how many festivals have reached out to us just saying, how are you doing it? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? Because we tend to be the earliest festival of all the big educational jazz festivals out there. So that's been kind of a fun collaborative experience when we think about some of our friends across the country as well. But yeah, we'd love to see you and have you join us and hear about it on the back end as well.
I was just going to add, and I'm not saying that anyone is old here in this group, but some of you might have actually been at some of the performances that you're going to see at from the archival footage. And I would love to hear from you. Like if something we show strikes a chord, or you go, oh, I remember that, I was at that concert, and I would just that'd be awesome to hear if that happens for anybody.
Yeah, it was so cool to hear kind of the back end because I know I'm social media, but I don't really know the ins and outs of how you guys really coordinated it. So it was really good to hear that. And it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Do we have any further questions for Vanessa, Vern, and Josh? I think we're seeing lots of thanks in the chat. So thank you all so much for presenting us today. We'll look forward to seeing what the festival has to offer. And if everyone can turn on their cameras and give a quick round of applause to our presenters, please.
Thanks, Jazz Fest team.
Thanks for having us, Kenton.
Thanks, Kenton.
But it looks like you had a great discussion. So couldn't be at two places at once, even on Zoom.
Well, it looks like you're still in the snow over by the tower, but I can't
Yeah, love these virtual backdrops. So well, take care, everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.